Hi, I'm JT. Welcome to another episode of The Critical Thought. In this episode, we will be examining how the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society impacts your life.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
This video provides more detail about the Watchtower Service Department, one of the most powerful departments at Bethel. We'd like to thank everyone for their feedback on our previous video, the Watchtower Service Department, Part 1. In fact, the comments were just outstanding. One of the individuals who left a comment, named Andy Sandoval, what he did, he really summed up the service department probably in the best manner I have ever read. This is what Andy had to say.
There is so much secrecy in the Watchtower Corporation. I would always wonder how the service department works. I only got death stares from circuit and district overseers when I would ask how the service department works and what policies they follow. This is the department that keeps all the records of judicial committee cases, appointments, deletions, and other problems, etc. This department receives the reports from the circuit overseers after they visit the congregation and inform of any problems found in their weekly visit. This department also receives reports from the Bethel guest speaker about how an assembly was conducted. The service department handles calls from elders and now recently emails on how to handle problems and whether or not a situation merits disfellowshipping, deletion of privileges, or any other discipline for a Jehovah's Witness that broke any rules. The most hardcore company men are chosen to serve in this secretive department. I personally knew one Bethel brother that was transferred to this department, and after only 1 month was literally physically sick to his stomach of all the reports and cases he had to handle involving elders committing adultery, fights among elder bodies, child molestation. Those cases are handled first by the legal department, but afterwards transferred to the service department. And cases of fraud amongst appointed brothers. It is equivalent to the KGB in the former Soviet Union, CIA for the US, and the hitmen for the mafia. This is where all the dead skeletons are buried, and where elders get their marching orders on how to execute punishment for the difficult cases, where the elders' manual and policy letters do not provide enough info. The company men at the service department have memorized the elders' manual, organized book, policy letters, and correspondence guidelines, and answer all questions regarding their self-righteous judicial process, dished out on the rank and file.
You know, I like the way he made that statement that in the service department, they know where the bodies are buried. This department operates in an all business, no nonsense manner. In fact, it's interesting. If you were to call the service department, they're going to ask you 2 questions. 1, what is your name and what congregation are you from? Now, if you respond by giving your name and your congregation and then say, brother, what is your name? They're not going to give it to you. Can you imagine calling up any organization, calling their service department and asking to speak to someone? Person comes on the phone. You give your name, where you're located at, and so forth. And then you ask, and what is your name, sir? And they say, I can't give you my name. Now, I want you to think critically about this. This person on the other end of the service department's phone line is a brother. Someone who is supposed to be willing to die for you. And you're supposed to die for him. And yet they will not give you their name. That should be your very first red flag. Clearly, we can see the double standard that exists within the organization. Now, some of you may be familiar with the hearing that took place in Australia, the Australian Royal Commission, where they was investigating and examining various institutions and how they dealt with child abuse. Well, if you recall in that video, you actually had an opportunity to see a member of the service department in action. His name was Rodney Sphinx. And for those of you who saw the video, you saw one thing that just simply stood out. This man did not deviate from being right on script. And that's what they do. They stay on script. And for those of you who haven't seen it, we'll put in the link down below an opportunity so you can go back and take a look at it. Because it is really amazing to see how a member of the service department, when they're in action. In fact, you can only imagine that back at Bethel, they were so excited. They were clapping because he stayed right on script. And that's what they do. So this is what the service department is all about. The individuals who are selected to work in the service department, they are straight up society men. It's just that simple. Now, let me share an experience that could indeed be considered a one-off decision. I introduced this term one-off in a previous video that we did entitled The Service Department, Part 1. Well, you may ask, well, what is a one-off? Well, it's very simple. There are many times correspondences that go between the society service department and bodies of elders that no one else knows about. And many times what you will have is there is nothing in print, which means there is no magazine, no publication where you can go and find this information. So a body of elders will sit down, write the society a letter, and the society will respond. What's interesting is no one else knows about this information. And in this video, we're going to give you an example of a one-off. There was a congregation, they had an interesting situation. Because there was nothing in print, they wrote to the society. The society responded back. Now check out this letter. This is a letter that the society wrote to a body of elders in response to two issues that this congregation was having. The first issue dealt with murder, and the second issue dealt with marijuana. After we finish reading it, we will go back and we will critically examine what the letter says.
Dear brothers, we receive your letter of December 17th in which you inquire about handling a situation involving a brother who has been guilty of serious violations of the law in the past. You explain that you have received information indicating that this brother committed several murders and crimes before his baptism. You ask if Florida law obligates some action on our part. Florida law enforcement authorities have no knowledge of this matter. As elders, you have no obligation to reveal information of this type to the authorities. Any information that you have obtained while fulfilling your duties as elders is strictly confidential. What he does about paying his debt to society is largely up to him and his conscience. Since he is apparently a fugitive from the law, he obviously would not qualify for any extra privileges of service in the congregation. You state that you have one report of his smoking marijuana with his co-workers, which may have been after his baptism. We assume that is the reason that you feel a need to meet with him. Since he is a dedicated brother and he is presently attending the meetings, there is a need to investigate to determine if some type of congregation action is necessary. Likely, the best approach is to arrange for two elders to talk to him informally, to make some discreet inquiries about his current conduct. If there appears to be substantial evidence of serious wrongdoing, then a committee should be formed to hear the case. As we believe you understand, it is imperative that the elders maintain strict confidentiality about his past. If the elders inadvertently reveal his past wrongdoing, undoubtedly it will result in major repercussions to him and his wife. So, handling this case calls for good judgment and discernment. We trust you brothers can handle things appropriately. Write to us again if you need further direction. We pray Jehovah's direction as you endeavor to fulfill your weighty responsibilities as shepherds of the flock. We send our warm Christian love.
Your brothers, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. So what do we see? We see a body of elders have written the society, and they've written the society about a person who is a baptized Jehovah's Witness, but has been involved in multiple murders and other crimes before becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Basically, the society is being asked, Do we have to turn this man into the law? That's what the elders are asking the society. There's no doubt that when the society service department got this letter, one of the first things they did was they consulted with the legal department, because we see exactly what their answer is. Note how they respond to a very simple question. Basically, do we need to turn this man in? What do we have to do? What is our obligation? And notice what the society said.
As elders, you have no obligation to reveal information of this type to the authorities.
Did you get that? The society told this body of elders, you have no responsibility, none whatsoever. And why do they have no responsibility? Notice closely the next sentence.
Any information that you have obtained while fulfilling your duties as elders is strictly confidential.
The reason that this sentence is very interesting is because of something that all of us as Jehovah's Witnesses, we used to argue with people. We used to argue people to death that we have no clergy and laity class. We taught it at Bible studies. We heard it from the platform. We saw it in the magazines. But is it not ironic that when the society wants to invoke the privileges of a clergy class, they have no problems doing that? You see, our forum is about thinking critically. This is the type of information that you and I, we have to think critically about. How can you, on one hand, tell millions and millions of people, we have no clergy class, we have no laity, no clergy class, and yet the moment that it is convenient, how many times have we seen the society invoke the law when it's convenient, even if it contradicts what we taught people in their homes? So how can they teach that? This is a straight up contradiction. You teach people you have no clergy and laity class, yet the moment it's convenient for you, you march it out, you invoke it. And that's what they're doing in this paragraph right here. Now you can understand why the society hides pedophiles. Because elder bodies are constantly being told, keep things in strict confidentiality. And that includes things just like this. But notice something else.
What he does about paying his debt to society is largely up to him and his conscience.
Isn't this amazing they use the word conscience? We have all seen over the years, the society has no problem telling you what your conscience can allow you to do and telling you what your conscience cannot allow you to do. Think about this. Your conscience could not allow you as a Jehovah's Witness to go to the swimming pool at the YMCA. And yet this directive from the service department is telling this body of elders it's up to his conscience what he wants to do. So you see, this is why we set up our channel. We want people to stop and think critically. If you can't see something is wrong with that, you have to ask yourself a serious question. And this is what it's all about, people. We can't make it any more plainer than this. This is why we do this. This is why my wife and I, we take the time to ask people, stop, think, ask the critical thinking question. But it doesn't stop here. Let's go on.
Since he is apparently a fugitive from the law, he obviously would not qualify for any extra privileges of service in the congregation.
Can you believe this? They are more concerned about whether the man can handle the microphone at the Sunday Watchtower lesson than whether he's a fugitive from the law. This shows you where their priorities are. It is absolutely amazing when you consider this is what directions that people are given all over the world, just like this. Now you can understand how they harbor pedophiles. It's just that simple. But now it continues. It gets deeper each time. Notice what it says again.
You state that you have one report of his smoking marijuana with his co-workers, which may have been after his baptism. We assume that is the reason that you feel a need to meet with him.
They get one report that he was smoking a joint with his co-workers, and they're on it. In fact, did you notice how they made the point, we assume this is why you really want to meet with him. Don't worry about the murder part, but we know you want to meet with him about that joint he was smoking. You see, this is what makes it so sad. We know that when they get one report of a child molestation, they don't jump on it like this. They don't jump on it like this. We've seen so much testimony about how they try to deal with that issue. And yet here we see the society, the body of elders, they're ready to roll in on this issue. Once again, critical thinking questions, things we have to consider. And really, the fifth paragraph just sums it up. It just sums it up so well. The society, once again, the service department re-emphasizes at the end of the letter, you got to keep this confidential. Nobody needs to know about this. Nobody should know about this. And they even explain why. Because if someone finds out that this man has murdered people, it'll make it very difficult for him and his wife. Can you believe that? This is a letter coming from the service department. You see, this is what goes on behind the curtain. This is what the average Jehovah's Witness will never see, never read, and never be aware of. That these types of issues are presented to the society, and then these are the type of instructions that are sent back. There's one thing that stands out in this letter more than anything else. Protect the brand. And that's very sad. When I read this letter the first time, I remember being asked a very interesting question. Can you imagine if this man, who was a fugitive from the law, had killed someone who was actually one of the sister's sons in the congregation? You would have a body of elders standing in the back room, looking out the window into the front hall at a sister who had no idea that the man who is sitting in the kingdom hall is responsible for her child's death. And I said that when I was asked about that, and I said, the brothers, the elders, they would have held it in full confidentiality. Now let me just put a caveat in there. Can you imagine if one of the elders on the body, after getting this letter back, said, I tell you, brothers, I don't know if I can not say something, because there is a person sitting out there somewhere in the community who has no idea who took their child's life. But the five of us in this room, we know about this. This was the case we read about 9 years ago. Cold case is what they call it. We know who's responsible for this. And it's interesting how Jehovah's Witnesses over the years would dog the Catholic Church for confession. They would dog the Catholic Church priests because they would know things or hear things that were wrong and they didn't do anything. And the Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses would condemn that. And yet, is it not interesting that when the Watchtower knows things, elders know things, they'll hold the same type of information away from everyone else? This is the service department in action, and it hasn't stopped. And so it really drives home the point of this is how the society can keep things in total confidentiality, wrongdoing just like this. We will leave the link below so that you can go read the letter for yourself. And you will probably walk away the very way I did. This is simply unreal. This has been JT, and I'll see you on the next video.
Hey, this is Lady C. Thank you for tuning in to The Critical Thought. We appreciate having you in our audience. Not only that, but we invite you to subscribe to our channel and be sure to hit that bell so that you can receive notifications when we upload new content. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you for being in our audience.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.